incredibly because they've made themselves available and their lives were just transformed completely by the power of God. And when I was probably about 11 years old, I read 2 books, as you can see on the screen, that changed my perception and really touched me spiritually. You may well know of them. One is called The Cross and the Switchblade by David Wilkerson, and the other is called Run Baby Run by Nicky, Cruz. Now, David Wilkerson, in the first book, he was a pastor, just like a small, skinny, small-time pastor in Pennsylvania in the UK. USA, in the USA. He was a good guy. He'd come from a good home. He was pastoring a really small church in 1958, so it was a long time ago. And in his book, he recounts the story, if you just go back to the pictures of the books, he recounts the story of incredible faith and testimonies. But he starts off by saying how as a pastor, he was just restless. He became restless and unsatisfied at looking at the building that he had, or the land that he came with his church. And he finishes his day in his book. He recounts one day watching TV late in the evening, and he goes to sit in his office. And I'm just going to read you an extract from the beginning of the book. This is what he says. How much time do I spend in front of the TV screen each night, I wondered. A couple of hours at least. What would happen, Lord, if I sold that TV and spent that time praying? I was the only one in the family who ever watched TV anyway. What would happen if I spent 2 hours every single night in prayer? It was an exhilarating idea. Substitute prayer for television and see what happened. Right away, I thought of objections to the idea. I was tired at night. I needed the relaxation and the change of pace. Television was part of our culture. It wasn't good for a minister to be out of touch with what people were seeing and talking about. So I got up from my chair and turned out the lights and stood at my window looking out over the moonlit hills. Then I put another fleece before the Lord, one which was destined to change my life. I made it pretty hard on God, it seemed to me, because I didn't really want to give up television. Jesus, I said, I need some help in deciding this thing. I'm going to put an ad in the newspaper for this TV set. If you're behind this idea, then let a buyer appear straight away, within an hour. No, within half an hour after the paper goes on the streets. When I told Gwen, my wife, about my decision next morning, she was unimpressed. Half an hour, she said, sounds to me, David Wilkerson, like you don't really want to do all that praying. Gwen had a point, but I put that ad in the paper anyhow. It was a comical scene in our living room after the paper appeared. I sat on the sofa with a television set looking at me from one side and the children and Gwen looking at me from the other, and my eyes on the great big alarm clock beside the telephone. 29 minutes passed by the dock. Well, Gwen, I said, it looks like you're right. I guess I won't have to. And the telephone rang. I picked it up slowly, looking at Gwen. You have a TV set for sale? A man's voice asked. That's right, it's an RCA, it's in good condition. 19-inch screen, 2 years old. How much do you want for it? $100, I said quickly. I hadn't thought about what to ask for until that moment. I'll take it, the man said, just like that. You don't even want to look at it? No? Have it ready in 15 minutes, I'll bring them the money. My life has not been the same since. Every night at midnight, instead of flipping some dials, I stepped into my office, closed the door, and began to pray.